let's please start with Rob because
I plan on it. Yeah, like I said, I'm slow playing it because I want people in the room here.
Yeah,
I mean, no, it's the usual. Yeah, you start with Rob. Bring up Jalen at the end of the show.
John's been starting with Rob. John's been starting with Rob all season. He's been starting with Rob all season.
No, but I mean, you go to the thing. Like I said, you go to the thing that was most interesting and or remarkable off of this game. And again, I think it was. I think it's hard to argue. It wasn't Rob.
Just, no fans.
He was so interesting. But I mean, that stretch where it's basically like steal, block, backdoor, make a nice pass, dunk, alley-oop. And like Bobby tweeted about it from the Celtics account, the game went from mildly competitive to a blowout during those Rob Williams second quarter minutes there. And that was basically the ball game. But the guy's just so freaking electric. He probably had like 11 fouls tonight. I think he only got called for 4.
So in that second quarter, before he got going on the stretch you just talked about, he wrapped up Capella on like one of the first plays of the second. Theis took another foul from him. I'm sure you guys saw that.
Yeah.
And then there was a third play where he like wrapped up Reddish. So by halftime, he had 6 fouls, but they only called 3.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the night, he got away with another one where Gallinari fell there. So he realistically had 8 fouls in this game.
That's what I said. I wasn't kidding. He had like 7 or 8 fouls.
So that was the most unfortunate game. And the exact stat was at the start of that stretch, it was 33-24. And then at the end, after all his dunks and layups and steals and blocks, it was 51-37. And that was pretty much the game.
Yeah. Dude was awesome.
Yeah. And it's funny because we always talk about, let's just see the Celtics just lob it up there, right? Just throw it to Rob and let's see what happens. And then he does like the most Rob, like we knew he was capable of this sort of athleticism.
That
it was incredible, man. Like that was.
I don't even know if he caught it, tapped it, one-handed it. His hand-eye coordination is just through the roof.
Yeah, like that's the kind of play where you're like, wait a minute, like if he's not that, it's not one of those. Okay, if he does this every single night, this will change everything. But like just that open opportunity, if he's able to get more comfortable and get these reps in, man, like that, it just opened my eyes to how explosive this offense could truly be. With Rob in the middle doing what he did. And he was doing everything on both ends. It's like he wouldn't stop.
Yeah, somebody tweeted it jokingly, Josue, to your point, was like, I wonder what this offense would look like if they just lobbed it to Rob on every possession, Like
it's like legit. And we always joke like that, but like he made it look so smooth. I was like, well, wait a minute. Why don't they do that more often? Like, in all seriousness.
You do see the other side, though, the ridiculous goaltending. All the fouls were so, like, absurd, and he easily could have ended up taking himself out of this one and having a bad game. So you do see both sides of the debate here where there's just an enormous level of upside, but also these, like, just absurd things he does that you just can't do out there that end up getting him pulled from games. And he only had 16 minutes in this one in the end because of all the fouling and mistakes and miscues. He jumped into a couple shooters on the 3-point line. And it's like, you're right, John. There's more good than bad, but the bad is so bad. Like just inexcusable stuff.
I know, but I mean, again, it goes back to the same point we're making. I believe that the
Sorry,
good
Mr. Perfect.
The good place, it's not
perfect. It's just like things you can't do.
But it's not the thing is, it's not a one good and one bad cross each other off. The good is something he's like one of the only human beings on the planet that it could be done. You know what I mean? Is like no one can. It allows you to do things that no one else on the floor you could even attempt it with. So it's not just a net positive result. It's an overall positive environment that wouldn't exist if Rob wasn't on the court. The things that he does, the game, the plays that the shots he alters, his quick hands, his steals, deflections, all of that stuff. No one else does that. And what he's able to do in and around the rim, and when you throw it up there, and again, we joke with the roll of gravity and all of this and that. It's a real freaking thing. I mean, and the guy just doesn't miss. I mean, his field goal percentage this year is like 85%, but
right.
Nobody does the positive things that he does. It's on a different level. That stretch there, he made like 7 or 8 what we would have called winning plays. Like what Marcus Smart does once or twice a game and we lose our minds over, and he does it. Robert Williams does it every game, like multiple times a game. That has to count for something. If we can live with Marcus's sloppiness, we can live with Rob's, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not quite.
No, you got to live with it. You have to.
I agree with you, but
Like
it's
your best player, Jason Tatum's putting his head down, driving into the lane, and turning the ball over left and right. But then also he's hitting ridiculous.
I don't think it's that simple though.
But he's hitting shots only Jason Tatum can hit. You know, like there is a trade-off there. Like, and I think Rob does things only Rob can do.
On this team, yeah, definitely, I agree. I mean, I've kind of been leaning towards your side of things. Where I mean, clearly we've been saying, "Where's Rob Williams all season?" He got like 6 minutes, 8 minutes. You know, like barely plays. So I think over the last week or so, yeah, he definitely does. The last week or so, I think, you know, the tides are turning a bit here. I think whether he's earned the playing time or whether it's just, you know, Brad's finally allowing him to get some more minutes. His teammates have seemed to always be big Rob Williams guys. So I don't think it was that. I just think for whatever reason, it took him a little bit more time to get in Stevens' rotation. So I think he's there now. I would be stunned if we're talking about, you know, random games where Rob Williams logs like 6 minutes. I would be disappointed.
No,
because
we haven't seen that all year. Like
we've seen sub 10 minutes. He's averaging like 14 minutes a game. So don't tell me that he doesn't have games where he's played under 10, because I can guarantee you that he has.
Earlier in the year, and you know, he's had a couple games with the hip taken off, and I still wonder what role that plays in it in terms of his role and like how much he does play physically. Because after that stretch, he took himself out of the game. He called out and, you know, stepped out of the game after that big run he had in the second. So I don't know, conditioning wise, hip wise, what's going on there, but in terms of earning minutes, I mean, 16-20 is a given. I just don't know if we'll see him cross that plateau or start like we've talked about, because there are still great players playing in front of him too. The other two centers were fantastic tonight as well.
Yeah, he might be playing the right amount. It's hard, you know, I mean, on a night like this, when you have Thompson playing a really good game, I mean, and Theis again, the difference with again, Capella went off again, but the difference when you see Theis defensively, he's obviously the best all-around defender of those bigs in there, even if he's going to get beat up by some of the bigger guys. Just his activity there, and obviously he's a more capable defender. He's more responsible defender than Rob for sure. Makes a difference having him back. When they complement each other like this, it turns out great, and you're like, wow, the bigs were great tonight. It's hard to argue against it. But when you see Thompson have and again, you don't want to overreact to one or the other, but you look at Thompson, 2 games, 3 games, you know, he's kind of like, oh, get this guy off the court. And Rob, I think, is pretty explosive almost every single night. So that's why I'm always lobbying for the Rob minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say, John, this is the best we've seen all 3 of them in one game, right? It's a cohesive unit, if you will, right? I mean, and I use the word cohesive loosely because they're nothing like each other. And I think Tristan Thompson, like, for what it's worth, he did have a good game, but Capella, like that, those offensive rebounds, those putbacks, like that's the reason
had
why
like 10 offensive rebounds, right?
Completely ate them up.
Yeah, like
8 or 9 offensive rebounds.
I think Mike Gorman even made a joke, like he has to be like the best I've seen at this this year, because it was, you know, it got to a point where you start thinking, well, Tristan Thompson, I mean, that's the first thing I think of when I first started this, or when I first heard of this other signing Thompson, is that those offensive rebounds, those second chance opportunities, he has to minimize that, especially against you know, teams in the East, whether we're talking the Hawks or whoever it is down there. I mean, besides that, you have Theis with the outside shot, you have Rob Williams getting things done on both ends, and that's why I think those Rob Williams are so valuable, especially whether we're talking with the second unit or you can plug him in with the starters, because with that energy on both ends, I just think it's not only contagious, but it puts the Celtics at a level energy wise where they're able to compete better. Like I just hated those stagnant, you know, 5-minute stints where not only the offense is dry, but like the defense, they can't even string together stops. And we've seen that so many times against the Wizards and against the Pistons and against, you know, the teams that the Celtics were essentially just out hustled against.
Now, were we concerned about the way it faded in the fourth, though?
I mean, to a certain extent, but Trey was, you know, to quote Brad Stevens a couple nights ago, that, you know, that's Trey. He wasn't too disappointed with the defense on Trey. You know, Trey's going to hit those shots, but the Celtics managed to have that padded lead that the Hawks, you know, it was too little too late at that point.
So the thing that real quick I'll say about Rob is like the highs are very high and the lows are very low. So it's kind of like the middle of what John sees and what Bobby sees. So like, I agree with John in the sense where it's like when Rob's out there, like really, really, really great things could happen. Whereas you're kind of capped with a guy like Tristan, who you know, he might do what he does. And tonight was a great game, so not a really good example to use. But generally speaking, you kind of know what you're going to get, like 8 and 6, right? Or like he's going to grab the rebound and whatever. But like with Rob out there, you feel like, wow, like at any moment this guy could just come out of nowhere and swat the ball into like the 20th row, or he could go for a nasty dunk. Like there's just a lot more you're capable of doing as a team with him on the floor. So he might play his way off the floor once in a while with a stupid mistake or whatever, bad defensive rotation. But overall, I think you get like the pros outweigh the cons, I think, when he's out there. So,
well, Jimmy, to take it one step further than that, though, what I think is, I understand the good and the bad of Rob, but what ends up happening is you put in a guy like Tristan because you think he's safer on most nights, and then you end up having to live with a bunch of things that he did. So with Rob, you might have mental breakdowns. With Tristan, sometimes he's just getting physically dominated where guys are just jumping and getting the ball, or he's trying hard. He gets the offensive rebound. He can't do the putback. His percentage on putbacks, I don't know what it is today, but as of like earlier this week, it was 40-something%. I mean, very, very poor on ones that should be automatic buckets. You grab that offensive board, you should be able to put that thing back in, and he's not. So you're living with negative plays from Thompson. You just feel better about it because it seems like he's in the right place. He's just kind of getting beat up like he was with Capella, in a couple of stints over these last couple of games. So that's what I mean is like, it's not like he's got a clean sheet when he's out there either.
He's been so much better though.
No, I think the thing with Rob is I think like a polished big man will really exploit Rob, and with the low post moves and things like that. That's when you'll see Brad too. Yeah, right. I agree. I think that's when you really see, okay, maybe you get a quick hook more.
That's when we start calling for Andre Drummonds, those games, and you're like,
that's when that conversation starts.
I mean, all that talk. I mean, Thompson's been better, but still defense disappointing. Rob's been better. And you still have a stretch like the fourth tonight where I was a little disappointed with him and then the mistakes we talked about. But Daniel Theis coming back tonight, I thought was the difference. A 7-9, game-saving 5 finishes to close the fourth. His defense was phenomenal in that first quarter where they were shutting down the paint. The double big lineup worked. And a great connection with Thompson now. He plays off Kemba well. He plays off Tatum well. He gets some running in transition with good rebounds. Like this, he's been so underrated this year. And I've called him a top 5 player on this team. And, we can talk all we want about Rob and getting more minutes, but there is no way around Theis playing 30 minutes every game. Like, it's just a shoo-in because he's so good. His chemistry is so great with the starters. He can fit so many different roles. I mean, come on. Like, this game was way more about Theis than Rob, if we're being serious.
We are being serious.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the case.
I think it is 100%.
I don't see that at all. I thought.
Oh, come on! Did you guys turn? I think you guys turned off the game after the third quarter, started setting up your computers, and just came up and talked about the first 3 quarters because Rob was a disaster in the fourth.
I absolutely think writing off a lot of what happened in the fourth is perfectly fine.
Well, they would have lost if it wasn't for that Theis stretch to close it.
I don't think they would have lost. That's fine.
That's been an ongoing concern, Bobby. Like bridging the gap to that fourth quarter. And yeah, obviously you don't want to see this happen on the reg, but I mean, you take those 3 quarters from Robert Williams and you say, wow, like that's to get you to the fourth or to at least bridge the gap between the second unit and bringing back the starters. I think he looked pretty damn good out there.
No, I'm not knocking Rob's game, but I'm saying Theis just doesn't get enough credit. We go crazy about Rob every night, but Theis has built such a consistency to his game that he deserves a ton of credit coming back tonight. And I feel like leading the win. Rob was +1, Theis was +20 in this one.
Now you like plus minus because you don't like it all the time.
Well, I think that just showed you what happened in the fourth because Rob got nailed in the beginning stretch and Theis closed it down.
Fourth quarter was a mess.
I just think the expectations are completely different when we're talking about those 2 centers. And for Robert Williams, I mean, granted, Theis obviously he was missed in the starting lineup, right? But at the same time, when we see this from Robert Williams, it just offers that glimmer of hope that you diehard Rob Williams fans out there have been just hoping to see him play 20 minutes a night or at least be used more often. I mean, I think this opens that window, or at least it's been open, but now it's continuing to get bigger and bigger for him right now. All these opportunities.
Well, fortunately for Rob, Theis took that foul in the second, or none of that would have happened.
No, how nice of him too. That was great. Like, you could tell. It was just like he gave him that look like, I got you.
Hey, I'm just saying. I mean, we keep saying play Rob more, play Rob more, play Rob more. Well, what do you taking minutes from Thompson? Sure, go ahead. I mean, at some point we could see Thompson off this team.
I think the general consensus here is Theis is your most dependable big man, and he's the one who does the most things most consistently. Rob is electric and makes a ton of plays, so you got to find minutes for him. That's really the only conversation being had here. I do think if you started Rob and played him 30 minutes a game, you'd see more of the warts, and then you wouldn't want it. So at the end of the day, I think we're kind of falling in between where Jimmy's saying don't have those 9, 12, 11-minute games because you're missing out on bench guys are at the end of the day supposed to provide spark. Robert Williams does it almost instantly the second he hits the court every single time. So I actually like him there coming in off of Theis. It was really mainly the Rob versus Thompson debate here, and I do think that where it gets sticky is when you get Marcus back and you shift out and Thompson goes back to the bench. We saw that already happen before Marcus got hurt, and it hurt Rob's minutes right away because all of a sudden you were like, how are we going to play this rotation? It took Rob out of that early action. You weren't seeing him until the second quarter or middle second sometimes, and you weren't getting impact from him during that little period of time. That's what I'd be worried about. And then the larger conversation of whether or not you can live with three bigs, and that's it.